This is such a tragic story coming out of South Africa. A 3-month-old baby has been eaten alive by giant rats after her mother left her alone to go on a drinking binge. The baby girl died in the Katlehong township in Johannesburg after her mother left her unattended for the entire night. The 26-year-old mother was arrested for child neglect when she returned to the shack in the early hours to find the remains of her child in a blood-stained bed. The baby girl's twin brother, named Lucky, was spared a similar grisly fate as he had been taken along on the drinking binge. Describing the horror, a neighbor said, "The baby could only have died a painful death. The infant's tongue, eyes, and fingers had all been eaten. Besides the missing body parts, the remains of her body had bites and wounds all over that were inflicted by the sharp teeth of the rats." Giant rats, some growing up to a meter long, are a major problem for the poverty-stricken townships in South African cities. In 2011, 2 baby girls were killed and eaten in separate attacks in squalid townships. Lunathi Dwadwa, 3, was killed in a shack outside Cape Town as she slept on the floor beside her parents. Another infant was eaten alive in a shack in Soweto while her mum was out with friends. The month before, 77-year-old grandmother died when giant rats chewed off her face as she slept. In Indonesia, an 18-year-old girl was found dead with her body covered with blood and her genitals stuffed with a garden hoe. The incident happened in Bengkulu on the west coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. The girl's name was Ino Fariha. She had met 15-year-old Rahmat Alim of Jatimulya Village, Kosambi District, Tangerang, Banten, a month earlier on Facebook. On Thursday evening at 11:30 p.m., May 12, 2016, the two made arrangements to meet at the victim's boarding house where they initiated sexual teasing. Rahmat Alim then wanted to have sex with her, but she said no. Being rejected, he left the house furiously. After a while, he came back with 2 other men, Arifin Rahmat, 23, Imam Harpiati, also 23, whom he didn't even know and had just met earlier. They allegedly forced their way into the room and committed the offense. According to the police investigators, the suspects had admitted that they strangled the victim with a pillow until she nearly fainted and took turns to rape her. Reportedly, one of the suspects then took a hoe and stuck its handle into the woman's private parts and then kicked the wooden handle so it penetrated deeper. Autopsy was performed on Ino Fariha and determined that 67 centimeters of the hoe handle was inserted into her. When she was impaled, she was still alive, but already dying, having been previously beaten in the head with the hoe. The insertion ruptured her liver and lungs and caused other internal trauma. Her friends got concerned when she had not shown up for work for 3 days. They went to her boarding house but found the door padlocked from the outside. With help from a male employee, they broke into the room and found Ino's body dead, under a pile of blankets and pillows. Police conducted investigations and made arrests of suspects on Saturday, May 14th. The morning of September 5, 1982, Johnny Gosch set out on his local paper route. On this particular day, however, his father did not accompany him, as he usually did. By 6 a.m., the Gosches received calls from their neighbors complaining that their newspapers had not been delivered. Johnny's father, John, set out to search the neighborhood. Just 2 blocks away from the family home, John found his son's abandoned wagon full of undelivered newspapers. Johnny was nowhere to be found. After a 23-day search, authorities were unable to uncover any evidence as to Johnny's whereabouts. His parents lobbied intensely to keep the case in the public eye. Johnny's face was soon plastered on flyers, newspapers, and more. Then just a few years later, Johnny's story went from tragic to downright bizarre. In 1989, a 24-year-old man named Paul Bonacci came forward with some shocking revelations. He claimed he had been abducted by human traffickers as a teenager and was forced to help in the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch, selling him into a child prostitution ring. He correctly identified several distinguishing birthmarks and scars on Johnny's body and said that Johnny had talked about going to yoga classes with his mother, a fact his family had not shared with the public. Nevertheless, the FBI did not consider Bonacci a credible witness. The next bizarre development came on September 1, 2006. Noreen Gosh returned home to find several disturbing photographs at her doorstep. She claimed that one of the photos showed Johnny bound and gagged with a brand mark on his shoulder. Another photo showed 3 boys bound and gagged. A 4-story building in central Bangkok turned into a scene of a horror movie when the Thai police stormed the place looking for the alleged members of a passport-forging gang. The raid was considered daily business by local authorities, but the officers who busted through the doors of the building were met with gunfire. A police officer was shot and wounded during the operation. 3 men have been arrested in connection with the passport forgery operation, 2 Americans and 1 British national. The police also found large quantities of drugs and money hidden in stashes inside the raided building. But the discovery of a dead person's body hidden inside a large padlocked freezer gave the officers most of the shivers. "We managed to find a big freezer. We opened it and found a dead body inside it. The body was chopped into different parts. It was concealed in many rubbish bags and put in the freezer," said Colonel Kasana of the Thai police. It is believed that the body had been kept about 7 or 8 years, making it difficult to determine who he is. A CAT scan on the body appears to show parts of the neck are missing, and that the initial tests indicate he was cut up with an electric chainsaw. A Burmese couple who was also detained with the group told officers they were hired to clean the building 3 times a week and ordered not to open or move the freezer where the dead body was found. In 1999, Hong Kong was horrified to hear the details of a grisly murder that happened in a 3rd-floor apartment in Granville Road 31. The victim was a 23-year-old nightclub hostess, Fan Man Yi, who was abducted by 3 Hong Kong gangsters and held captive for more than a month. During the time of her captivity, the gang members tortured Fan regularly, beating her with steel bars and pouring hot plastic on her limbs. After she succumbed to her injuries, the gangsters disposed of her body by dismembering it and boiling the pieces. In one instance, they boiled her head while cooking noodles on the adjoining burner, and even used the same chopsticks to stir both. Her decapitated head was then sewn into a Hello Kitty doll. The gruesome murder only came to light after one of the gangsters' girlfriends, who had participated in the torture, revealed everything to authorities after she experienced nightmares over the incident. Subsequently, police arrested the 3 and a court sentenced them all to life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 2 decades. In 1988, Ahmad Siraji, a cattle breeder in North Sumatra, Indonesia, claimed to have had a vivid dream in which he saw his deceased father. His father's ghost told him that he was destined to kill 70 women and drink their saliva. In doing so, he would gain supernatural abilities and become a powerful mystic healer. Over the course of 11 years, Siraji killed 42 girls and women who ranged in age from 11 to 30. They were all killed in ritualistic fashion, strangled with a cable after being buried up to their waists in a sugarcane plantation near his home. What made the murders even more eerie was that each corpse was consciously buried with the head neatly facing Siraji's house. He believed this would intensify the power he would gain from the kill. In 1998, after police discovered some of the bodies, Siraji was arrested and eventually convicted of his crimes. In 2008, he was executed by firing squad. His 3 wives, all sisters, were also arrested for assisting in the murders and helping to hide the bodies. One of his wives, Tumini, was tried as his accomplice. Hundreds of albinos are thought to have been killed for black magic purposes in Tanzania, and albino girls are being raped because of a belief they offer a cure for AIDS. At least 63 albinos, including children, are known to have been killed, mostly in the remote northwest of the country. Campaigners say the actual numbers are likely much higher, since many cases remain undocumented. Albino hunters kill their victims and harvest their blood and body parts, such as hair, genitals, and limbs, for potions. Their body parts are prized in some regions of Tanzania, where witch doctors say albinos, who lack pigment in their skin, eyes, and hair, bring luck in love, life, and business. Activists reported 3 murders of teenage albino boys from the same family in northern Tanzania, who were poisoned and their bones later robbed from their graves. The Tanzanian government says it is determined to halt the macabre killings, but has been widely criticized for inaction. Back in 1977, when Colleen Stan was just 20 years old, she went out hitchhiking to a friend's birthday party in Oregon when she was picked up by a couple traveling with a 7-month-old baby. She had no idea she was about to become the victim to a cruel monster. Cameron Hooker, who was then 23 years old, and his wife Janice took Colleen to their home about 30 miles away, and her torture began almost immediately. She was stripped naked, tied up, and whipped in their basement. And that was just the beginning of the long 7 years she would spend as a hostage and sex slave. When Stan wasn't confined inside the tiny coffin-shaped box that Cameron kept under his and Janice's bed, she was tied to an evil torture rack of Cameron's own design. The couple would only allow Colleen out of the box for 1 hour per day to be beaten, raped, and tortured. She had to go to the toilet in a bedpan, which she fixed in the right place using her feet. Cameron warned her that he was part of a group called The Company, who would think nothing of tracking her down and murdering her if she ever tried to escape. She was forced to sign a contract which stated she was the company's slave. It wasn't until 1984 that Colleen was able to make her escape with the help of Cameron's own wife. Janice was jealous because apparently Cameron wanted to make Colleen his second wife, in addition to capturing more female slaves. Following their escape, Janice provided a testimony against her abusive husband, which exonerated her from any charges, while Cameron was sentenced to 104 years in prison. Three people charged with killing at least 2 women, eating parts of their body, and using their flesh to make and sell stuffed pastries went on trial in northeastern Brazil. Jorge Beltrão Negromonte da Silveira and his wife Isabel Pires, both 51, helped lure victims to their home with the promise of work as a nanny with the help of da Silveira's 25-year-old mistress, Bruna da Silva. They were arrested in April 2012 in the city of Garanhuns. After killing their victims, they cooked their flesh into empanadas and sold them to neighbors in Pernambuco, located in the country's northeastern region. Da Silveira vividly detailed the murders in a 50-page book, complete with drawings. Police discovered the 2 bodies in their backyard, which they believe belonged to 20-year-old Alexandra Falcao and 30-year-old Giselle da Silva, inside of the trio's home. The 2 women were recently seen near the home before being reported missing. At the time of their arrest, they told police they belonged to a sect that preached the purification of the world and the reduction of its population. Their crime mimics those of fictional barber Sweeney Todd, who slit the throats of his victims, which his partner, Mrs. Lovett, cooked into meat pies. Elisa Lam's death is both creepy and deeply sad. The 21-year-old Canadian tourist's body was found floating in the water tank of the Cecil Hotel on February 19, 2013, after being there for up to 19 days. During that time, hotel guests had been using the water to shower, brush teeth, and drink. The water tank was covered and the roof door was locked, but the story doesn't stop there. The night of her death, Lam was recorded acting erratically in an elevator, pressing buttons, running in and out, and acting like she was hiding from someone who couldn't be seen on camera. Her death was ruled an accident. Probably many of you know the story and the security footage from the elevator already, as it was very popular. However, for anyone who hasn't seen it, here it is again, in all its disturbance.